I lived in a cabin out in Canada with my wife and 2 kids for almost 10 years. It was the life we all enjoyed, living out in the peaceful and quiet forest. The location of our cabin was very isolated, with no roads even leading to it. However, there were several other families that lived out in cabins a few miles around us. Over time, thin and faint paths formed between our cabins as we would often trade and join each other for dinner. We had a small farm for vegetables, as well as a variety of livestock. Overall, our lives were good and quiet for years, but things took a very sudden turn. I was up late one night, sitting in our living room reading as I usually did, when I hear the cattle start moving around frantically outside. This was really unusual this late at night, so I went over to the window facing our backyard and moved the curtains aside. All of the cattle were on the far left side of the field, moving quickly as if they were running away from something. I shifted my gaze over to the right side, and I couldn't see much through the darkness, but after my eyes adjusted, I was able to make out a very large deer standing partially behind a tree facing the house. It was very still, not moving at all, just looking in my direction. I couldn't tell if it was looking at me directly, but it gave me a very uneasy feeling. I didn't understand why the cattle would run from a deer, but seeing as it was nothing dangerous, I closed the curtain and went back to reading. A few more weeks go by as usual before my wife wakes me up in the middle of the night. "What's going on?" She told me to be quiet and listen. I could see the fear in her eyes, as if she'd been up for a while now. Very quietly, I could hear something moving around the cabin slowly. It sounded as if someone was dragging a stick along the walls all the way around. But after the sound made a full circle around the cabin, it stopped. I immediately got up and went to my kids' room to make sure they were okay, then grabbed my hunting rifle and went around to every window. I didn't see anything until the last window I checked, which was my bedroom window, where I could see the same deer standing in the dark forest staring in my direction, not moving at all. Again, I'd never seen an animal act like this before, and I had no explanation for the sounds around the cabin. A dark feeling fell over me, and I closed the curtain. I didn't know what was going on, but it was beginning to make me paranoid. I didn't believe in anything paranormal or possessive, but this was hard to wrap my head around. The next morning, I decided to take a long walk to one of my neighbors' cabins to ask if they had experienced anything unusual lately. I told my wife to keep the kids in the house and to make sure everything was locked, then headed down the path. The whole first mile, I was just trying to come up with any possible explanation for the events that had been happening, but the more I thought about it, the more scared I'd get. Halfway to my neighbor's cabin, I got a weird feeling, and almost instantly I heard leaves rustling behind me. I turned around and met the eyes of the deer standing right on the path just 15 to 20 feet from me. Staring into its eyes, chills ran down my entire body as I noticed white around its iris and small pupils, a distinct feature to that of human eyes. I turned back around and ran all the way to my neighbor's cabin, practically in tears as I had just witnessed something that I believed could not even be true. Thankfully, my neighbor was home and settled me down when I arrived. He seemed worried for me, but in a different kind of way than I was expecting. When I told him of what I'd seen, he didn't even seem surprised. Sitting in his cabin, he began to share with me his beliefs of the Navajo Skinwalkers. He said that they'd only show themselves if they wanted something from you, or if you have disturbed them. Him talking about it seemed to make him at peace though, which only terrified me even more. I left soon after, and luckily nothing happened on the way back. During the next few weeks, I could barely sleep and had horrible paranoia. But after a while of nothing else happening, I began to get better. However, the peaceful life that I once lived out in the cabin was taken from me, and I never fully recovered from the fear of what I saw. Eventually, we moved closer to town to give our children a better life. It's been almost 15 years since the events took place, and I never told my wife or kids what I saw on the path, or even what the neighbors told me. I'm not entirely sure why, but something inside of me just urges me to keep them out of it. I think that's why I felt the need to write this and share it now, because I've held it in for too long.